Well, first of all, it's a great pleasure to be here, and I better keep myself on radio as well. And it's being an accountant. Commerce is part of my DNA. I'd like to acknowledge Cole, obviously yourself, Tim, my wife, Kevin Anderson. It's good to see you here, Kevin. Bloke who was the best man at my wedding, who snuck in the door, Neil Albert. We'll take no questions from him. But why is small business so important to me is this, that I believe in life you've got to get to your highest level of freedom. That is what you should do without hurting other people. And in your quest to try and get to that highest level of freedom, you've got to have as much say as you possibly can over what you do in your life. And the way to do that is, if you can, is to get yourself into business. I mean, yes, it's hard. Yes, it's driven. Yes, you've got to make sacrifices. But ultimately, you determine what your corporate uniform is when you're in your own business. You determine the hours you work when you're in your own business. You determine the relationships you have and who your clients are going to be. You actually chart the path of what you want to be when you have your own business. And I think this is a marvellous thing. I think it's an expression of freedom. And as a person from the conservative side of politics, that expression of the individual freedom is sort of paramount in what we do. And it doesn't matter, as an accountant, you can see that freedom could be attributed to people in all manners and ways of their occupations. So yes, you can have the doctor who, as we know, will do pretty well. But I used to get a great thrill out of seeing the person who started as an apprentice electrician, sparking and fridging apprentice, and then go on to start their own business, and then to take on one employee, two, and then to take on some apprentices, and later on to look at them as they were turning over $600,000 to $1 million a year, $600,000 to $1 million a year, and to say, I knew this person when they were an apprentice, and to see their band going around town and say, that's good. There's something that is morally good about that. There's something that I find terribly satisfying about that. To see that person progress through life, to see the person who started as a subcontractor with a truck. Usually they'd start with something very basic, watering truck, getting down dust. And all of a sudden they'll get themselves another truck, and then they'll get themselves some more plant, and next thing they're building their business up. Then one day you go past their yard as an accountant, and you're looking at your client, and you hope not to see all their plant lined up, because that means it's not out billing out, which is a bad idea. But you can see that their business has turned into a substantial business, and it's growing. And within that, you can get some who go on to do incredible things. And this person was not a client of mine, but it was actually my next door neighbour, another accountant. And his name, and he and his brothers were in business, and they were called the Wagners. And they built their business up until one day, this family, I remember, invested $200 million in building a new airport. And you can think of how this family had grown. And this family business just grows and grows and grows and builds up. And I think that one of the great things about being back here at Tamworth has always been, my family used to do a bit of business around town from a very young age, basically real estate and things around town. But Tamworth always had a great potential. It was always a pretty good bet. It was always growing. It was always entrepreneurial. It was always thinking at the edge about how it can take the next step. And I try to take my life coming off the land up at Danglemar, where you have to be very entrepreneurial, and also my experience as an accountant into this job. Ladies and gentlemen, if you take the next step of, just so to give you some idea, I think it's important of how it works, or how I work on your behalf, and how my job goes. I explained this to my staff. I said, you got 3 jobs. Now this is not one job, you've got 3. The first job is this. You've got to be a good member for New England. You must be a good member for New England. New England includes not just Tamworth and Armidale, but it also includes Legume, it includes Drake, it includes Ashford, it includes Emmaville, it includes towns that are in the corners and so often forgotten about. You must make sure that you look after them. You must make sure you look after the people who just don't quite make it into centre stage. You must look after them and respect them, because they are your boss. That's your job. You're a servant to those people. And if you look after them, they may give you another chance. They may. That's their right, and they may dispose or otherwise and affect their right at the ballot box. But if you don't look after them, you don't have any other job. You don't have to worry about that. That's the end. The next job you've got is on behalf of the Australian people. And that is, we have the incredible honour of being appointed as a Minister of the Crown, and we have a duty and responsibility to the Australian people. And it is a big responsibility. I have 4,500 staff. My budget is about $2.4 billion a year. And I am responsible for that. If I don't do that job with the proper prudence and the proper dedication, I get sacked, like anybody else, by the Prime Minister. And it's a robust negotiating process. This is not for wallflowers. This week, as you know, I've had to let the secretary of my department go. Believe you me, that is a tough, hard process. But in any business, you've got to make tough, hard decisions, and they're not easy. But if you walk away from them, you're not doing anybody a favour. You've got to make sure that the business is working well, that the program is going forward. In this week, on your behalf, within that, I had to have negotiations with the Vietnamese government and the Vietnamese Minister for Agriculture, a gentleman by the name of Duc Phat. And why was that important? Because I have all the grape growers in southern New South Wales who have lost their contract into Vietnam. It's about 80% of our market in table grapes. So they are crawling the walls, asking for a result. And you've got to negotiate with another gentleman from another country as to how we can go through this. And the negotiation, it starts with, you know, I like you, you like me, I like Vietnam, you like Australia, you like kangaroos, I like Cabramatta, let's get down to business. and then the discussion is like, and it was literally, I've got people crawling all over me about these grapes. What can we do? What can we do to make this product move again? So we can start getting these things happening again. We're following through with the white paper negotiations, ag white paper. And people are saying, oh, why isn't the ag white paper out? Because I'm trying to negotiate the best deal I can possibly get for you. That's why the white paper is not out. And these negotiations, they're not easy. They're not sit down, oh, could you possibly hand me $1 billion? Well, Barnaby, how about you go flush your head down the toilet? You know, it's these negotiations are tough, and they go into meetings where they literally say they get heated and heated and heated, and they stop and they say advisors leave the room, and then you have a bedside conversation with the Prime Minister of Australia, and he can at times be quite abrupt. But this job is also going on all the time, where there are certain demands where they say you've got to roll your swag and you've got to go over to. I tell you what, they wanted me to go to Turkey or something for a deal, which I'm not. I wanted to come back here this weekend. But there's all the time demands for you to be in other parts of the world. It is not. The first time you wander around, it's a great thrill, but believe you me, that thrill quickly dissipates. When you actually prove that you can live on a diet of airline food, there's a time you start really not liking it. And you just want to go home. You just want to go home and just sit on your own veranda and have a cup of tea and talk to the kids. When you go to these places, you don't actually see anything anyhow. What you see is a plane, a motel, and a meeting room. That's it. And then in the opposite direction all the way back. So your wives actually have a good time, though. They get to see lots of stuff. Also on behalf of this, just on a side issue, and you say, well, what are other things happening? This week, I got the Singaporean ambassador in. And why would I want to talk to the Singaporean ambassador? Well, he wants to talk to me. We're talking about investment opportunities. They have a conversation inside a conversation, and you're trying to work out what the centre of their conversation is, and you're trying to drop hints in there all the time as well. And I'm saying, you know, we've got a few people in the Singaporean Air Force out at the BAE out here, and we could take a few more, you know. Say, oh, I heard you. So no, I don't think you have heard me. You know? I'm saying, can you please send us some more pilots? And so all the time trying to get other advantages for Tamworth as well. Ladies and gentlemen, I think it's also important that as an accountant, you judge yourself by numbers. and you work out how you're going. And we've made a difference. I am absolutely affirmed of the view that we have made a difference. When people doubt me on that, say, come to the Tamworth sale yards with me, I'll show you how we're going. Come and see us, see what a load of sheep is worth nowadays, and I'll tell you how we're going. Come and see the markets we've opened up, free trade agreements into Korea, China, and Japan. And I was part of that. I had to go to China for our part of it. And we did that. I'll show you 6 small markets. One that has been shut for 10 years, or for 40 years, Iran, for live sheep. The fact that people, once upon a time, you whistle a good tune, you'd buy some castrated ewes, I literally give them to you. And now at times we're getting $60 for them. I had sheep going up to $150 for lambs. And this is good money. The fact that we had people for the first time, when you start getting letters back and people say, you know, I just put a load of bullocks on a truck the other day, and I just want to say to you, I've never received that money ever before in my life. The money I just got back from them, I've never received that money before in my life. And I say, well, there's a reason for that. Because we're opening up the markets, we're doing the business, we're seeing things through. You know, why? Because we're driven by people who in former lives were accountants, who had farms themselves, who had businesses themselves. And we probably don't perfect the art of politics as well as our counterparts on the other side. But it's honest to God, we understand business a lot better. Because we are business people, that's what we did. And we've got to try and make sure that we continue to do that. Tamworth has a huge future, a huge future. I think in the coming years, you will see the world change. It's all getting so much, ladies and gentlemen, it's all getting so much closer. Everything's getting closer. We have 2 trading blocks, 2 massive trading blocks near us. One is China. Everybody talks about China, and so we should. It's a massive one. We've got another one that's bigger than it, and you don't realise it's called ASEAN. That's Vietnam, Indonesia, Laos, Cambodia, the Philippines, Brunei. As a trading bloc, they are bigger than China for us. And we've got to make sure that we understand that. And you know what they want? They want soft commodities. Soft commodities. As people make their way to the middle class, they want to wear a nice suit. They really do. They're sick of wearing the polyester one. They've done that. And they want to eat nice food. One of the greatest examples of your standard of living is on your plate in front of you. There are other parts of the world, they just wouldn't even dream of that. Just wouldn't happen. The reason they give you peanuts and lettuce and call it a nice meal is because they can't afford anything else. But once they can afford a steak, by gosh, they want to eat a steak. If you want to make a statement in China or Japan, order a steak. It's almost like you've just put a gold Rolex on the table and you're wondering who to give it to. Because they just go, that's incredible. That is an incredible statement of wealth. And for us, we just take it for granted. When they look at what we put on a barbecue, they go, how do they do that? How do they do that? How could they have that much money? And we just take it for granted. So people are alive to this. And now you will see them, and you're seeing the investment come into this town. And I'd like to commend the work that Councillor Murray and the other councillors have done in that space. And all the time. And where are they going to get their soft commodities from, ladies and gentlemen? They're not going to get them from Sydney. They're not going to get them from the western suburbs of Brisbane. They're going to get them from places such as Tamworth. And so we've got things lined up. If we can play this game properly, if we can line ourselves up with these business families, because that's we've got other business families over there in Phnom Penh, over there in Hanoi, over there in Halong Province and Harbin, over there in Manila, and not just up there in Manila, but over there in Manila. But we've got a chance to really drive the economy of this forward in a substantial way. In my time in Queensland, you go away like Odysseus. By the time you get back, no one remembers that you were ever here in the first place. But at my time at Queensland, I saw other cities, towns grow to cities and big cities. And Toowoomba's a classic one. And we've got to all the time look across the border too, not just look across the seas, look across the border and say, what did you do? How did you get to 125,000 people? You're stuck on a hill, you've got no water supply, and you've got 135,000 people living there now. Now, what are we doing? How did you manage to get a family in there that was worth, a couple of billionaire families in that town? How did one of them manage to start building an international airport with their own money on the edge of town? Let's start thinking about how, because the Tamworth is a droid, just like Tamworth, it's a droid. It works quickly and nimbly on its feet. So, well, let's work out how we do this. Because we can push forward with the city of Tamworth and really drive it ahead. We line all our ducks up. In closing, it's always amazing. As a politician, people always want to say, but what have you done? What have you done? You know, you always think, oh, well, you know, apart from, you know, quite a bit. And you almost feel embarrassed at times that you have to give a report card, but I suppose I should. And I was looking through the other day some of the things that in this area that we've basically brought about. When we started, just when I first arrived here, Chaffey Dam was about to lose what they call go out of contract, and they didn't have the money to finish it off, and we put money towards it already. We also had a problem with a frog, Burralong frog. I don't know how this happens. But we got the thing started. It's happening. They're building it. And I don't want it to be the last dam we build in the area, because I'm chairman of the Dams Committee, I want further dams to happen. We want this agenda to push forward. We've got Bolivia Hill, that had fallen out of contract. Bolivia Hill realignment, we got that money back. That has started. We announced $6 million the other day for the Tenterfield bypass to get that process started. Down the road from here, $75 million for the Scone bypass. So we're all the time trying to make sure that New England Highway remains that conduit of commerce. There was a place called Drake, never had any employment, nothing ever happened at Drake. Near it was a little town called Jubilee. Now there'll be 400 people moving in there to be employed in the blueberry industry, because we've opened up blueberry markets, and those warehouses will be in Tenterfield. If we come down the road, we're going to double the size of, because of the development of markets, there's going to be a doubling of the size of the Gyra tomato factory. It currently employs 400, it will employ 800, and we'll put about $1.3 million into the roadworks to make sure we can start running the trucks there. You can go and look at it, it's massive. That's driving ahead. Out at Ashford, they didn't have a medical centre, they didn't have any money, we got the money, we opened the medical centre the other week. At Gyra, Kalara, for the dementia wing, we got that one started. If we go down the road further, Armidale Airport, they didn't have the money, we put the money on the table so we can get the upgrade of the Armidale Airport. I moved a ministerial office out of Sydney into Armidale, and there's now a ministerial office. It hasn't officially opened, but it's there, it's open, it's working, and there are staff in there. As we start to try and move resources out of Sydney and out of Canberra into regional areas, and this is part of that process. If you come further down to town, even around here, I can think of the lights that we got for the City Council, the dam that is open. Just the other day we announced further money to upgrade access to the Tamworth Regional Stock Exchange. Bridges in this area. Just in the last month, we put $705,000 on the table for Overington Bridge to make sure we upgrade that. We put $350,000 on the table for Bukakara Bridge up on the Legume Woodbong Road, because someone's going to get killed on that road. We have to do something there. We also had the 7 Mile Bridge on Glen Ennis, which is another $350,000. There's a bridge just out here between Somerton and Manila. We got about $170,000 for that. We got more money for New England. We got into trouble. We got more money for New England than any other way we've got in upgrading bridges, because I'm a bit of a tough negotiator and I want something. So we're driving agendas there. There was and I know that a lot of people in this room will disagree with me fervently on this, but people were crawling over me backwards and forth about Shenhua Mine. Okay, and so you'll never be able to do anything. Well, we did stop the clock, and I know this room probably doesn't agree with me on that. I'm always up front. I'm always up front on things that both for and against, but I've tried to listen to what I believe is the honesty of a debate, and cogently try and affect what I think is the most just outcome that I can provide. These are the issues that just run off the back of my mind. $660,000 about 2 weeks ago for a small business provider in Armidale. We'll try and get further. I think Tamworth's going to race ahead. It's just always been there. Armidale needs love and affection to make sure we try and get it moving as well. Everything works to a bigger plan. We actually, for so long we've talked about the Inland Rail, now we're actually building it. $300 million is on the table, appropriated, and that process has started. I'm in constant negotiation with the Prime Minister about getting more money. It's a $7 billion bill. This is big. $7 billion bill. And but we're getting, and we're arguing the cost-benefit return ratios and having to have that cogent argument, which you can't do unless you've been in business. And we say the cost-benefit return ratio, this, I don't agree with the proposition of where you put it. I believe it's a lot higher than that. We're actually winning that debate. We're winning that debate, so we're moving it up. We're moving the greater appropriation and investment of this up the agenda. Why is that important to me? Because I'm the Minister for Agriculture, and I've got people around Walgett says it costs me $70 a tonne to move grain to port. And if I go to Canada, guess what? For the same distance, for them about 12. So they absolutely whip us because their costs are so much lower than ours. But so we have to get this massive investment into our region. And we're going to do it. We're going to do it. Ladies and gentlemen, I think that gives you an understanding of where we're going. Now, obviously, I'm going to close on one thing. Just with all that discussion about, so I hope you can see as business people how this game works. It is not a game for the faint-hearted. Nothing happens by accident. It is, if you've been in business, I was and I still am on your behalf. There's a massive bunch of files on my desk as a minister on your behalf of the Crown that people want addressed, that people want me to give my attentions to that day. And somehow, people have got to get their file, if they're a good advocate, from the bottom to near the top, so you will listen to it. I can tell you there are a lot of people in Parliament who want to try and get in your door and move their file to the top. But the person you're most likely to listen to is the one who's actually in your party. They get their file to the top because they have this capacity to do this thing called change the leader. So, which means they get your attention. Kevin is going for election. Kevin is going to have the capacity to get a file to the top for you. That's how things work. We look what's happening around here in hospitals. And I've never mentioned that as Tamworth-based hospital because I didn't do it. It had nothing to do with that. I can tell you everything else in that list has got my fingerprints all over it, solidly. But Tamworth-based hospital has got Kevin's fingerprints all over it. And is it just that hospital? No, we're rebuilding Armidale, we're rebuilding Inverell. We've completely refurbished the hospitals of this area. The other side, if they get in, are not going to do that. They're not going to do that. And I'll tell you another trick. Any program that is uncontracted, the first thing that happens when a new government comes in, it gets swept. That means they just say, that was the previous government, it ain't on the table, it's gone. And a little old bush accountant, that's exactly what we do. And that's where you've got to go back in. So if there's a change of government, all those things, I'll tell you the first two casualties will be Armidale Hospital and Inverell Hospital, gone. Because they're going to say, we're not building them. Why? We're going to build hospitals where our people are. And they're not in those towns. And so we've got to make sure that we keep Tamworth so that if I can work with a state member of parliament, with a council, with you as a servant to you people, with you as my boss, then we can continue to do marvellous things for this area, and this area will boom and grow. All the best and God bless.